Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Spider-Man Far From Home. This is the second of the Tom Holland films, and I was wrong yesterday. Talking about how, we must have already watched the third one in the series. No, it's not even on Disney Plus yet. Yeah, so that's just my delusions there, because I've seen it so many times in the theaters, and I have the Blu-ray, but yeah. So it's me thinking that maybe we already watched it, but it is not on Disney Plus. I'm delusional. Anyway, this is from 2019. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and I'm gonna spoil a lot of stuff here for you. I'm just telling you that right up front. It's really difficult to talk about this movie. It's the kind of movie that's big enough that I can. It's 5 years ago. It's 5 years old now. Normally I'd be much more sensitive when it comes to Marvel movies and things like that, but odds are, if you were going to see it, you've been given ample opportunity to see it. It's not like they hid it from you. It's not like it's been secretly just sort of put out there and you had to go dig around. No, there's many formats in which you can watch it, not just Disney Plus, but hey, here we are. So, and also when it comes to the Marvel Universe, everything's connected, and I gotta be able to talk about certain things. This is a film that rolls out of the end of Avengers Endgame. After the snap and the blip and whatever you want to call it, the defeat of Thanos. Yes, I'm spoiling that too. The death of Tony Stark, Iron Man. Yeah, that too. This is the first film that came out after that. I think the Christmas after the summer release of Endgame. And yeah, this is kind of a traumatic time. Well, just a really down time for Peter, where he's dealing with stuff, dealing with the loss of his father figure mentor, Tony Stark, and it's no small thing. We never got to see a Uncle Ben type moment with Peter Parker, and we know why now, thanks to the third film in the series, which I'm not going to go into, but that's okay. We get Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Peter Parker, dealing with a whole new world that is mourning this great hero that in the cheesiest way possible. I honestly, I love Betty Brant and the other kid that's with her on the school video newspaper. It's so high school level. Like, honestly, I shouldn't say that, because there's some high schools that I'm sure have some pretty great AV teams and and really knock it out of the park with some just astounding stuff. But this team, even though this school is pretty much a kind of an advanced school, I don't think it's like a normal public school. It's a pretty advanced school out in Queens. But I guess they're not really big on paying for images of candles and doves in the background as they put some old pictures they found of Tony Stark on the internet back when he was a warmonger. You have to see it to believe it. It's supposed to be sad, but it's hilarious. It's a great way to start the film as we get into this understanding where we are in the whole realm of things. And for those of you who may have skipped the Avengers films for whatever reason and suddenly just decided, hey, you know what, I think I'm just going to watch the Spider-Man films. Well, this does a little bit of justice, the barest bit of justice, in explaining what has happened since we last, for those of you watching the Avengers films, we've seen more Spider-Man than we've seen him just in the Spider-Man films. When we last left him a week ago, like literally we watched the first of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films a week ago, the very he had, just saved the day, and everything, was working out all right. And I don't want to say this, but I'm going to save it till later. There's a little bit of a neat thing that I discovered about this film and the last film that connects them interestingly. But we know that Aunt May discovered that Peter is Spider-Man in the final seconds of the film. And and that's great. It's by the time we see them again, they're working as a team. She's helping out at this hunger facility, like this that feeds the homeless and shelters them and does all these services. It's called Feast. It's taken right from the comics as well, because Aunt May in the comics also works for Feast. It's an acronym for something. I don't know what offhand, but. She brings in Spider-Man. She's got connections. Who better to help promote this endeavor that she's working with than her connections to Spider-Man. So, and also, hey, it doesn't hurt to have a friend, a gentleman in her life, in the form of Happy Hogan, who is trying to keep it on the down low as much as he can. But when he stops by with a check for a giant check for like $500,000 to give to the shelter, to the Feast organization, yeah, it's not. Okay, yes, it's not from him. It's from the Stark Industries organization, but still, the fact that he can do that, and yeah, it's Pepper, I'm sure, is the one who approved that check. So yeah, what we have is Peter just trying to find his place. He's a little overwhelmed. He's definitely just dealing with so much, going outer space, fighting with all the heroes, becoming an Avenger, doing all these things, and now he's just friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He just wants to be friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. In fact, he doesn't even want to be that. Technically, he wants to just be Peter Parker. He's seeing too much. Much like Tony was dealing with a lot of PTSD after the first Avengers film. One of the first things we see of Tony Stark after the first Avengers film is Iron Man 3, and him dealing with just the fallout, the emotional, the trauma, all the just craziness that went into fighting aliens and a Norse god, and almost dying while pushing a nuclear missile through a portal in space. That in Iron Man 3 is how his means of dealing with it. Peter's on a vacation, so that's where we get far from home. Peter and his class end up on a field trip going to Europe. How great is that? At the same time, this also seems to be a great opportunity to tell MJ that he likes her. Now, unless MJ also got blipped, I think she says. By the way, this is. Even though it's not meant to, I'm sure it's meant to a certain degree, but even though that's not the whole purpose of the film, there are so many things revealed in dialogue as to who is blipped, who is not, and what happens when kids who disappeared for 5 years during the blip come back and haven't aged, and they have to do school. They're not 16. They're not 21. They're 16. There's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So you kind of get to figure out who got blipped and who didn't. Aunt May apparently got blipped. From what we understand, I don't think Happy got blipped. So yeah, we get a whole lot of just sort of little tiny nerdy Easter eggy type of things that help build out this world. And there's always a big risk in that, because it tends to be a situation where somebody will come along and just throw out something like, oh, this is Earth 616. Dang it, no. It's not 616. And I just realized that this is the first time that somebody has said that the MCU is 616. The second time, which I thought was the first time, because I completely forgot whole chunks of this movie. Like, I understand all the the high points, all the major moments, but there's little details in the dialogue that I completely forgot. Doctor Strange says that 616 is the MCU's version of the Marvel Universe in his film, The Multiverse of Madness. Why didn't we all complain about this? Did we complain about it? Did somebody say something when Mysterio makes this mention? Played by Jake Gyllenhaal, by the way, fantastically. It's from everything I got from him, the idea that he really enjoyed playing this role because it's multifaceted. He's not just a bad guy; he is also a good guy. And for those of you who are being spoiled right at the moment, or have no connection to the Marvel comics whatsoever, Quentin Beck. Mysterio has always been a bad guy. He's always been a guy who messes with Peter's mind. And Steve Ditko, by the way, I remembered Steve Ditko's name since last week, and I'm sorry that I keep forgetting it. Steve Ditko and Stan Lee created Spider-Man, along with so many other characters. Part of his rogues gallery is Mysterio, the first man to draw Mysterio. He's an actor who uses special effects. In this case, in the comics, back in that day, the 60s, practical special effects. In this case, Quentin Beck is not so much an actor, but he's got the temperament of a prima donna. He's a guy who used to work for Tony Stark, and he uses drones and illusions and all sorts of things to give the impression of crazy things happening that he gets to put down as the hero. He gets to handle as a hero, and he adds himself into Peter's life in circuitous ways, even with getting vouched for by who better than Nick Fury, played by Samuel Jackson, of course. Colby Smulders is here as Maria Hill as well. So we get the main crew together. We get what's his name, Joseph Batalon as Ned Leeds, and Zendaya as MJ, and Peter. That trio together. We get Betty Brant in a much bigger role from before. She's a pretty girl, but she's got some great unassuming comedic timing. She works off of Ned so well. And by the way, in the comics, Ned and Betty, we get to see them go through. Well, here in the movie, we get to see them go through an entire relationship in the course of a film. Their relationship in the comics is not as bright, not nearly so. As adults, yeah, things get really bad for them. It's not the same thing whatsoever. Their relationship in this film is mainly done for comedy, and it's so if you're like, oh, you know what, I want to get in the world of Spider-Man, read some Spider-Man comics, and he's like, oh, Ned is in this, and he's a what is it, 30-year-old white guy, and Betty is the secretary from the way at the Daily Bugle when we first see her in the comics, and she grows up to be an investigative reporter, not just a secretary to J. Jonah Jameson. And then there's the Hobgoblin and everything else. That's a whole other mess, which comes to a head. By the way, if you want to read a really good, just a single contained comic, everything is connected, but one single contained comic that's a little bit thicker than most, but it's from the 90s. It could be as early as the late 80s, but from the 90s, Spider-Man and Wolverine. Spider-Man versus Wolverine, either way. You might be able to find that issue somewhere, or a reprint, or a trade paperback that is a reprint. I don't know, but it's a really good story, and Ned plays a pretty important part in it. But it's a very unusual Spider-Man story. Not so much an unusual Wolverine story, but the two of them together, it's actually really super good. It's older, it's harder to find. You might find a comic shop dealer looking at you funny, like, oh, where did you get this information, kid? And I can't get a hold of that easily. It's still worth asking for. So, anyway, back to the film. In this, our main villain is Mysterio, as I've said, and played enthusiastically by Jake Gyllenhaal, who is kind of setting himself up to be the new Iron Man. And Peter, with the weight of the world on his back and just everything churning in his gut, he just wants to he just wants to be close to MJ. doesn't necessarily want to be Spider-Man. That's why he's really eager to head off to Europe, where he can leave the suit behind. You can't go to Europe and be Spider-Man. Everybody's going to figure that out. If suddenly Spider-Man shows up, one in Washington, D.C. in the previous film, he shows up in Italy, in Venice, another time, or Prague, everybody's going to figure this out. Well, you can't leave Spider-Man behind. He is Spider-Man. And it's a little bit of a complicated conspiracy that puts Peter in danger. And believe it or not, it's not like it's hard to believe, but there are layers upon layers of conspiracy in this. It's kind of, even in the final, there's a mid-credit sequence, which I'll get to in a moment, which some of you who've seen this already know what it's all about, but there's an end credit sequence that I forgot about. I knew it was there, but I forgot what it was. Well, it connects very strongly to both the Marvels, well, sort of, the Marvels movie and also the Secret Invasion movie. So, series on Disney Plus. I can't say that, oh my gosh, you gotta see this final scene in order to understand any of that others. No. That's just like 5 years ago, or technically last year, 4 years ago, they were setting things up. Yeah, it's not like Kevin Feige and the gang. They're just like, well, I guess we're going to throw this into the movie. Skrulls, why not? So, so yeah, we get a great European vacation. Jeez, it would be great if Chevy Chase had shown up in this. So yeah, you get a neat little European vacation. You get Mysterio as a hero and a villain. And the great thing about this is that, as he explains later on in the film, in a bit of monologuing to his cohorts, he's like, this crazy story of me coming from an alternate universe that where these creatures had destroyed my world, and I'm here to stop them as well. You know what? After everything Spider-Man's seen, after everything all the heroes have seen, guess what? It's believable. They'll buy it. The weirder, the better. And boy, is it about to get weird. It's going to become even more believable as time goes on. So, and it has a little bit of commentary about how people will believe anything if you lie to them enough, because you want to believe certain things sometimes. So in this, we get to see little hints of another villain. We get to see Hydro Man in a sense. Not really Hydro Man, but the great thing about it is that even though it's not really Hydro Man, which is another one of Peter's or Spider-Man's rogues gallery, Flash looks up what appears to be a conspiracy theory that maybe this is this guy who is Hydro Man. And he mentions the actual name of the character who is Hydro Man in the comics. So it's neat that they still made a reference to it. So it's. And you kind of see that they're doing their best to dig through everything, through all the different villains. We had, last film we had the Vulture, the Shocker. Now I'm already blanking on the rest. And they knew what they were going to do with these things. They knew where certain villains were and weren't going to be. They knew that they had ideas for Kraven and Morbius and, of course, Venom. All those things are, stacking up in their own ways. Madam Web certainly wasn't going to just show up out of nowhere. She's not really a villain, but still, And of course, I guess they kind of had an idea of how things would go down in the third film if they made it all happen, with villains we've seen in previous films. There's no need to make a new Sandman or Electro for this universe yet. These characters came over from the other multiverse verses. So, and again, a lot of this was priming Peter for the concept of a multiverse, which he was definitely going to be witnessing in the third film. So yeah, it's in no way home. Uh, so yeah, eager to believe these things. So one of the great little things about this, one of the little Easter eggs I enjoy seeing throughout this, you'll notice a lot of the license plates in Europe have a lot of space for numbers. They're pretty clear, easy to read, but you're going to find a lot of them start with ASM or TASM. Well, that means Amazing Spider-Man or The Amazing Spider-Man or some variation of which. Normally, if you look, it's not, I don't know if it's consistent with everyone. I didn't see it constantly, but I saw it in more than one case. When they're on the road and you see a license plate of a car on that bridge, a license plate for maybe the bus, all sorts of things. Look at the numbers that follow that, of course. Look up those numbers. Type in Amazing Spider-Man 137, and guess what? You're going to find some stories, the comics that feature characters and concepts that were present in this film. So that's kind of a fun little thing. Even if you've seen the film before, now you're going to just pay attention to the cars, and that'll be fun. Don't forget Spider-Man, forget everything else. But yeah. One of the great things about this is that technically, even though Tony Stark is dead, he has a presence in this film, like a huge, not just like an emotional weight on him. He literally makes cameos, but in clips from other films in which he's appeared in. Okay, I'm not going to spoil everything, but it's still, there's a great connection with the technology that they introduced in the what was it? Was it Civil War? The beginning of Civil War, Captain America. It's all the holograms and everything else leads to this. Everything's connected. I know I say it too much, and it's way too true. Sometimes obnoxiously so. But this is where it works. This is where it's not inconsequential. And so this is actually one of those big hook type of films. There's a lot of films that, that can exist that really don't, they're their own thing, and that's okay. It's great when you can have a fully self-contained film without having to know how everything connects to everything else, and they pull it off. That's awesome. That's actually what you want in a film. You want a film that can stand on its own and not just be another step to something else. If there's any problem with the MCU, with Marvel films, Marvel Studios films, it's the fact that their films or their TV series on Disney Plus just feel like stepping stones to something else rather than its own thing. That's my own main complaint. They need to be entities on their own. And thankfully, this one does stand on its own, but it also is a huge piece of the puzzle. It bridges everything from the ashes of Endgame, literally, and takes us into the new era of MCU films. So, all that to say, this film is one of the rare films that jumps from the final frame, for the most part, into the first frame of the next film. Because this was a story that was going to get told one way or another. In the comics, the story was told as part of the Civil War comic series, which didn't roll out the same way it did in the Captain America movie. Peter has his identity revealed. In the comic, he chose to reveal himself with Tony's influence. And in the end, in this, well, his identity gets revealed in a very unsettling way by J. Jonah Jameson, of all people. But he's sharing a video made by Quentin Beck by Mysterio in his final moments in the film. So, yeah. It's and then of course all the fallout from that goes right into No Way Home, and Peter's running to Doctor Strange to change reality. Go back in time and change that, right? You can do that. You have that. Oh, you don't have the time stone? Let's try something else. So yeah, that's this is kind of a you kind of want to watch this one, obviously, before you watch the next one. But these three make a really tightly connected series of films. One of the other little Easter eggy type things I only realized tonight, and it's just because I haven't watched them all together, but the very last line of the mid-credit sequence is, what the yeah, you know what the next word is. In the first one, it's Aunt May saying this just as she discovers Peter's Spider-Man. In this one, it is Peter saying it when suddenly the world knows who he is. They do not, as far as I can remember, have anybody doing that in the third film. I'll have to check my Blu-ray because it's not on Disney Plus yet, despite what I thought. So yeah, to me, this is just, the Spider-Man films have not lacked in any way so far with the Tom Holland films. I've loved them. Yeah. And No Way Home, I think I've seen probably more than all of them in the theaters anyway. So yeah, it's just, they just fit together so well. It's so well acted. It's such a great cast. You feel for Peter in every aspect of his life, and you do not mind that, there's a lot of times you watch a superhero film, and I said this last week, that when you watch a superhero film, you want to kind of see the superhero. You don't care about a secret identity half the time, especially when it's like a two separate worlds kind of thing. A lot of the times writers tend not to make the main character who embodies the hero as interesting as, one, the hero in costume, or the villains. Like, sometimes Clark Kent isn't as interesting as Superman. Usually he's not. But Peter Parker, with all of his problems, with all the things he's going through, you know what it's like to have a crush on a girl or a boy or whoever you are. You know what it's like. And you know what it's like to just have the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you just want to get away from it all. I knew that was going to happen. Nope. I've been talking too long. Sorry. But we all know how that is, and that's why Peter Parker is such a fun, great character that we can all identify with. It could be anybody under that mask, and that's how we've dealt with that in the past. That's how we discovered with Miles Morales taking on the role, and Spider-Gwen and other various media, the cartoons and the comics, of course. There are so many different spider people now, obviously. A multiverse, a Spider-Verse of them, if you will. There are so many other things that I could talk about on this forever. I love the comedic the teachers. The teachers are just used for comic relief. J.B. Smoove declaring that everything that's going wrong is due to witches is hilarious. He's a science teacher. And Martin Starr as their counselor, kind of guide, just being as dorky as he possibly can. Okay, maybe not as dorky as Freaks and Geeks, but dorky, And yeah, it's absolutely worth it. I could watch a movie about them just being, and then we get Hannibal Buress from the first and the third film and his conspiracy theories. I just want to, a movie taking place at a school. It doesn't have to be a movie, but these guys, they're hilarious, and I think it would make an interesting just offshoot series of shorts, maybe. I don't know. It'd be fun. That's what I got to say about that. I know I'm missing something, but yeah, it's always fun to watch these Spider-Man films, and we will not be getting the third one yet. When it's going to be added to Disney Plus, I have no idea. By the way, I just realized this past week. Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil, is on Disney Plus. That's getting added at the end of this quarter for the next. We'll watch that. I have not watched that in a million years. I'm sure Elektra will be added at some point. And this is not Hulu. This is on Disney Plus. So anyway, let's pick tomorrow's episode. 53. I feel like we've done that one already. I thought I set this up so that it wouldn't repeat, but yep. Dang it. I set you up to not repeat. Settings. Stop. No, I don't know. Whatever. Prevent rerolls. Okay, well, I must have only started that. Check that box after. So we're going to pick another number. By the way, 53 was Cinderella from 2015. 188. Again, if you don't know this already, this is all random. I don't know what I'm watching next until it tells me. 188 is one of those... there's a lot of stuff in the middle, like the high 100s, that it doesn't really hit very often. 188. We got a short, and it's from Frozen. Yes, it is Olaf's Frozen Adventure. I think I've seen that before. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll find out. Olaf's Frozen Adventure is what we're watching next on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.